Hi. In this video, I will talk a little about the two macro commands called SendKeys and called Sleep, and why you essentially should never use them. If we look at this, I've made a back macro here, and SendKeys is, if we look at the help file, it will say down in SendKeys what it can do. Get down to it 1 second. SendKeys simulate keystrokes on the keyboard. And then it actually gives a warning about this and some more information. And it especially talks about SendKeys is depending on machine speed and such things. But then tells how you can do a SendKeys and you can work with those. And similar, we have a sleep command in here, but let me take it in here. So if you have a macro, doesn't really matter what it does now, but just arbitrarily, you have a macro that needs to print. So you need to press the print button here. You might think that the best way to do that is by doing a SendKeys, and this means control. So control P is normally print. So why not have the macro part of the printing process actually send the control P, because that's what user do normally. Similar for formatted searches, normally what you do is you press Shift F2 in order to activate them. So a SendKeys can also essentially do that. Again, it all comes down to machine speed. Machine speed can determine if this works or not. It can be on your fast machine. It can register the keyboard command fast enough before you actually run the next command. Slow machines, it would take a longer time, and therefore your macro would actually fail, perhaps, because it's not done printing or done doing the formatted search at this point. And for that reason, sleep exists. So sleep is essentially just wait 2 seconds before you run this next command. But even slower machine, you might need 3 seconds. On a faster machine, you just waste 2 seconds. The most important part in all this is none of this in 99.9% of the time is not needed. Because SendKeys Control P can just as easily be done with an activate command. So activate is pressing a menu item, and there's a print button up here. And if you look in the lower left corner of the screen right now, you can see that menu UID is 520. So this line in the macro and this line in the macro does exactly the same, but this is more secure. Because it will never begin to execute this line before this line is completely done, before SDK have returned to us and said this is okay. Similar, SendKeys, well, yeah, you normally press Shift F2. Many people don't know that there's actually a menu item for doing that up here. You can see it actually shows that it's the Shift F2. And that menu UID you can see down there is 7425. So again, this line of code and this line of code does exactly the same. But again, this happens no matter what before the next line we put in here. That also brings up an important point. Many people know that SendKeys is bad, so they don't use it. But they still have problems sometimes when doing a macro. It doesn't really do the way it works. It happens just before you think it should happen and such things. So many people think, okay, then let's put in a sleep command between these two. Then surely it must work. And this is just wasting time. If you don't use a SendKeys, you should never use sleep. SendKeys and sleep are there in order for those very, very advanced strange scenarios that where you cannot get an activate button, you cannot press a click, you cannot do anything. Again, even 1 out of 100 is rare that you need to do send keys. But people think this will help when you do not send keys, and it will never help. It will just waste you 2 seconds. Because again, as I mentioned, this command will never begin to run this before it's actually done. So this is just wasting time. And if you have problems with things going in the wrong order or something, there's something wrong with your macro in general. And a sleep command, no matter if you set it to 1, if you set it to 100, will never fix it. It's just wasting time for you. So just remember that. If you don't use send keys, you never use sleep. So they always relies on being together. You don't need sleep all the time, but you can do it. But in general, I would never really use this. I will always use the real commands instead of send keys and sleep for 99.999% of the time. So with that, I hope that cleared up the confusion about the sleep command, which is the most common part of this problem. And hope you find it beneficial.